You won't believe how quickly my life crumbled, how a woman I barely noticed took everything from me. My name is Sylvia Fletcher, and I had it all, a luxurious home, a successful husband, and a perfect life. But perfection is an illusion. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late. Stay with me until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to hear the full story. I had always believed that a woman of my status didn't need to concern herself with trivial matters like housework. My husband, Jonathan, disagreed. He insisted we hire a maid because, in his words, I couldn't handle the household alone. I scoffed at the suggestion. What was there to handle? We already had cleaners. But Jonathan was stubborn, so I gave in, not realizing that this decision would destroy me. That's how Fatima Diallo entered my home. A quiet, soft-spoken African woman, she kept her eyes lowered whenever she spoke, her presence barely noticeable. I barely glanced at her when she arrived, waving her off with the indifference I reserved for service staff. She wore dull, oversized clothes, her voice barely a whisper. I assumed she would remain invisible, just another shadow in my house. From the start, I found reasons to mock her. Her accent, her hesitant movements, even the way she dressed. Jonathan would roll his eyes, telling me to give her a chance, but why should I? She was here to serve, not to be my equal. Then something changed. One evening, Jonathan complimented her cooking. I laughed it off, but something about it unsettled me. Jonathan had never commented on food before. It was beneath him. So why was he suddenly noticing? That night, as I walked past the kitchen, I heard laughter. Jonathan's laughter. I peeked inside and saw him talking to Fatima. And not just talking, laughing. Their voices were hushed, their words too soft for me to hear. But I saw it, the ease, the familiarity. I stood frozen for a moment, my stomach twisting. Then I shook my head and walked away. She's just a maid, I told myself. Nothing more. But I was wrong. So terribly wrong. I was never the jealous type. I had no reason to be. I was Sylvia Fletcher, wealthy, elegant, and in complete control of my life. Or at least, that's what I thought. But looking back, the signs were always there. Little, insignificant things that I brushed aside, until it was too late. It started subtly. Too subtly. One evening at dinner, Jonathan swirled his wine glass, deep in thought. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, he turned to Fatima. What do you think, Fatima? The Merlot or the Cabernet? I blinked. Since when did we ask the maid for wine recommendations? Fatima, standing at the edge of the dining room, smiled modestly. The Merlot, sir. It pairs well with the lamb. Jonathan nodded, pleased. He took her advice, just like that. I forced a smile, but my grip on my fork tightened. A twinge of irritation crawled under my skin. She was getting too comfortable. Then came the whispers. One afternoon, as I walked past Jonathan's study, I overheard him on the phone with a friend. His voice was warm, almost proud. Fatima is amazing. The house runs smoother with her around. I stopped in my tracks. Amazing? I had never heard Jonathan praise anyone like that, not even me. A few days later, I noticed something odd. Fatima was dressing differently. Her dull, oversized clothes had been replaced with a fitted uniform. Her hair, once hidden under a scarf, was now neatly tied back. And was that makeup? Who told her to do that? I called her into my room one morning and demanded answers. You're spending too much time preening in front of the mirror. That's not what I pay you for. She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. Instead, she smiled, calm, confident. I only wish to represent this household well, ma'am. Her tone was polite, but there was something off about the way she looked at me. Like she wasn't afraid of me anymore. That evening, I noticed another change. Jonathan was home. He used to stay late at the office, too busy for dinner, too exhausted for small talk. But now? He was home early. And he was talking. Talking to Fatima. Chatting. Laughing. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but doubt gnawed at me. He was different. She was different. Then, the final blow. One morning, I reached for my favorite silk robe. The one Jonathan had gifted me on our anniversary. But it was gone. I searched the entire closet, my heart pounding. Where was it? Who would take it? And then, I saw her. Fatima. Standing near the kitchen door. Wearing something eerily similar. I felt my stomach drop. Was it mine? Or was it just a coincidence? For the first time, I realized, this wasn't just a coincidence. Something was happening in my own home. And I was losing control. It wasn't just in my head. People were noticing. At brunch with my friends, the conversation started lightly, gossip, fashion, the usual. Then, someone mentioned Fatima. She's so devoted, one of them said, sipping her mimosa. Your husband must love having her around. Another chimed in with a smirk. Careful, Sylvia. If you're not nice, she might just replace you. The table erupted in laughter. But I wasn't laughing. Something inside me snapped. The moment I got home, I called for Fatima. She appeared, hands folded, that same infuriatingly calm look on her face. You're fired. My voice was sharp, unshaken. Pack your things and leave. For the first time, her expression changed. Just a flicker, something unreadable in her eyes. But then she nodded, bowed slightly, and walked away. I exhaled. It was over. Or so I thought. Because moments later, Jonathan exploded. What the hell is wrong with you? His voice was louder than I had ever heard it. You can't just treat people like trash, Sylvia. He didn't wait for my response. He grabbed his coat and stormed out. I stood there, stunned, my hands trembling. He had never spoken to me like that before. I barely slept that night. My bed felt too big, too empty. For the first time, I was afraid. But the real nightmare began the next morning. I walked into the living room, still groggy from lack of sleep, and there she was. Fatima. Standing tall, a smug smile on her face. Good morning, ma'am. She held out a crisp document. Jonathan rehired me. It's all official now. I have a contract. I snatched the paper from her hands. Permanent employment. A raise. Even leave benefits. My pulse roared in my ears. He had done this behind my back. That night, Jonathan didn't come to our bedroom. He slept in the guest room. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. This was real. He was slipping away from me, and I had no idea how to stop it. Then, just past midnight, soft laughter drifted from the kitchen. I pulled on my robe and followed the sound. My breath hitched at the sight. Jonathan. Standing beside Fatima. Helping her cook. They were close, too close. Their hands brushed as he passed her a spoon. They smiled at each other like they were sharing a private joke. I felt paralyzed. Rooted to the floor. Watching my husband, my home, my life, slipping away. I should have seen it coming. All the signs were there. Our anniversary arrived, a day that once meant romantic getaways, candlelit dinners, diamonds. This year? Nothing. Jonathan didn't mention it. No card, no flowers. Just silence. But the next morning, I walked into the dining room and froze. A box sat on the table, a gift-wrapped box. Not for me. Happy birthday, Fatima, Jonathan said, his voice warm, too warm. Fatima's hands trembled as she opened it. A delicate gold bracelet. Expensive. Elegant. Something he would have given me once. She gasped, pretending to be surprised. But her eyes darted toward mine, watching, waiting. My hands balled into fists. She wanted me to see this. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind screamed at me to do something. I had ignored too much for too long. So I checked our bank statements. And my heart stopped. Thousands of dollars, gone. Jonathan had been transferring money to Fatima. Regularly. My stomach twisted. Why? I needed proof. Something undeniable. Something that would finally force the truth out of him. And I got it. One evening, Jonathan stumbled in late. His shirt slightly unbuttoned. His hair messy. And his scent, not his own. Fatima's perfume. Where were you? My voice was eerily calm. He sighed, rubbing his temple. Working late. Lie. Working late? I stepped closer. Or were you with her? For a moment, he didn't answer. Just stared at me. Then, in a voice so cold it cut through me, he said, "You never cared about me, Sylvia." She does. The room spun. I was nothing to him now. I swallowed back my tears. Fine. If he wanted a war, he'd get one. The next day, I met with a lawyer. I was ready to fight. But then, the final betrayal. Jonathan had already changed the house's ownership. I wasn't just losing my husband. I was losing everything. A week later, a letter arrived. Divorce papers. I opened them with shaking hands, feeling my world crumble. And then, I saw her. Fatima. Standing in the doorway. She raised her left hand, tilting it just enough so the light caught the golden band on her finger. My wedding ring. She had one. I always thought the worst pain in life was losing something you love. I was wrong. The worst pain is realizing you were the fool all along. I stand in the middle of my once beautiful bedroom, now stripped of everything that was mine. The luxurious bed, the vanity mirror, the silk curtains, they all belong to her now. Fatima. I pack my bags, my hands trembling. Not from sadness, not from grief, but from rage. This was my home. My kingdom. And now? I was the outsider. Jonathan didn't even show up. Not a goodbye, not a second glance. The man who once swore to love me forever had erased me like I never existed. Footsteps. Soft, slow. Fatima appears at the doorway, no longer a maid. Her clothes? Elegant. Her posture? Straight, powerful. She no longer lowers her gaze. She looks me right in the eye. Leaving so soon? She asks, tilting her head. I glare at her, willing myself to say something, to fight back. But words feel useless now. She steps closer, lowers her voice, and whispers, "You should have treated me better." My breath catches. This wasn't an accident. This was her plan all along. Every glance, every smile, every silent moment, she was waiting. Watching. I clutch the handle of my suitcase. I want to scream. I want to rip that smug expression off her face. But instead, I laugh. Because suddenly, I understand. I had everything, and I threw it away. My arrogance, my cruelty, my refusal to see the people around me as human. I made her feel small. And now? She had risen above me. I walk past her without another word. I descend the stairs one last time, my heels clicking against the marble floor that I once walked with pride. Outside, the air is cold, unforgiving. I turn back, my eyes trailing up the grand house, my house. But it isn't mine anymore. The windows glow warmly from within. I can hear laughter. Their laughter. Jonathan and Fatima. They are happy. And I am nothing but a ghost. I exhale slowly, lifting my chin. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that life humbles you. The world keeps turning, whether you like it or not. So I do the only thing left to do. I walk away into the night.